Welcome to another episode of Digging for the Truth. I have got Reba Russell and Toya Kaplan back with me today, and we're going to be talking about how to overcome the areas of pornography, addiction, how to really have an impact in the world of sex trafficking. We can't wait to share what we know, or what they know, in just a minute. Well, welcome back. Toya, are you still with us?
I am.
Good. Well, welcome back. Thank you guys for helping. I knew that this was going to have to be broken into 2 episodes because this just, as you said before, Toya, it's a fire hose, not a garden hose. And so we talked a lot. The last episode was pretty heavy because we talked about a lot of the dangers, the problem, the stuff going on. And so I'm a little more excited about this discussion because we're going to be talking about solutions and things that we can do. And I'd like to pick up with where Reba left off using her voice. So if you listen to the last episode, she called somebody out on a mission trip to Nicaragua. If you haven't heard that story, you need to go back and listen to it. But you actually did the number one thing that's important in the area of defense, and that is to be loud and to be heard. And I think that so many people are afraid to let their voice come out. You are a small woman, but boy, you're mighty. And that's what I have all these small girls. In fact, some of the most powerful women and powerful people I know are these small women. And it's because you know how, and you're not afraid to use your voice. Have you always been that way, or is that something that God worked up in you?
No, I've always been that way. Actually, as a child, I kind of got myself in trouble doing that.
Did you?
But I've learned how to, just how to steward that. But yeah, I've always been that way about just that sense of justice.
Yes.
Protecting the helpless, the defenseless. That's always been in me. And I think some of that has to do with my own brokenness from childhood. You know, you have more compassion. But I think mine just grew into passion, especially after I began to find the healing that I needed in that area. And so I think that in itself gives you the confidence. And I know Toya can probably identify with this as well. Once you begin to find that healing yourself, there's a confidence that rises up in you and more of a sense of justice, this wanting to see this thing end, whether it be sexual abuse in the home, whether it be the sex trafficking, which a lot of times they all intertwine. But yeah. Well,
and to let your voice be heard. So, I mean, what is your experience in the area of your voice, Toya?
Well, spot on. And I will say that I have not always, I've always been where I would fight for others. But because of what happened and all throughout my past, I thought if I would, when it came to somebody trying to molest me or do something to me, I would shut down and get quiet and think if I would just be quiet enough, if I'd just be compliant. That's not at all what happens with predators. In fact, it brings their game up a notch. And so part of my process of healing, and I love Reba's story, I love it, is that when you begin to heal, the areas of your life only God can walk you out of. When you begin to heal from that and you break free from that inability to speak up for yourself, and we saw it with every single survivor we worked with at the house in particular, they would not fight for themselves. They would not speak up for themselves. They'd be more likely to fight for their friend and maybe be punished for that. That was my life, is that I'd jump on you and beat you down for my sister or for a friend. But if you came after me, I just shut down and closed up. It was one of the most traumatic things. And I know Reba could probably speak for days on this with people she's counseled with, but where they've just gone inside and just gotten just quiet and so hurt and overwhelmed with never having a voice for themselves. When I broke free, when I got healed, especially the first year that I was born again, but throughout my growing up in the Lord life, past that, when I broke free from that and actually found my voice, I already was fighting for friends and people I knew for different reasons, that I felt things were happening to them unjustly. But my voice was like, I will never sit here and watch one more person without me saying something or doing something. I will not sit by and question myself, or, oh, well, maybe they didn't mean that. Maybe he just meant such and such. Maybe I'm looking at that wrong or took it the wrong way. I'd rather say, back up, knock it off, and use my voice for that. And these young girls and boys that we're working with, creating in them their own voice to speak up for themselves. You might be wrong later, but you took the initiative early on to go, no, no. And those 97% of these girls and boys that end up being trafficked, anywhere along the way, if they would say no, it would stop. And so we've got to talk about that. And then your side of it, Reba, where the public needs to step up and go, I think something's happening over there. I need to use my voice and say something. And that's what you did, Reba. And I'm so proud of you for that.
Absolutely. Well, there's a story that I heard recently, and I think that's important. I mean, this isn't just a little girl issue. This is a little boy issue too. So there was this man. It's kind of a long story. There's a fellow, a pastor I love to listen to, and he has started a new podcast, and he had a fellow on that ultimately worked for the CIA. But what he started off as a cop, and he was collaring all these people. Collar is just an arrest, but he would see the problem, but he's like, okay. He became a believer, and he said, okay, God, well, I see the problem, I see the result, but how do I get to the root? So he began one case at a time, praying, okay, well, what's the root? And then God would reveal the root to him, and he would attack the root, and then the problems around that area would dissolve. Specifically, I mean, all over the place. But like, for example, they had this in one of the areas had a huge gang issue. And, so, instead of saying, yeah, we got a gang issue, because, well, why do we have a gang issue? And so the Holy Spirit revealed it to him. He attacked the root of the problem. He didn't have to go worry about the gang anymore. The gang dissolved. And so the CIA reaches out to him, and they said, well, I've heard about this, your cases and all that kind of stuff, and we'd like to, maybe you come and work for us. And they said, just teach us how you do it. He said, well, you're not going to like what I have to say. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He said, well, so he said, pick one of the cases. And so he picked one and read it to him. He said, okay, well, in that particular case, I knew this was going on, so I stopped and asked the Holy Spirit. And he said, and there were crickets on the other side. And the CIA eventually hired him. Okay, I told you all of that to get to this one story he told. And that was that there was this little boy. He was speaking at an elementary school, and there's this one little boy in the school. And they knew that this kid, from the language that he had used, at some point that he'd end up being, because, and this is, the first, when I heard this was after all that Uvalde stuff, but anyway, and they knew that we're watching this kid because someday he's going to end up being a school shooter just from the things that he said. Do you mind talking to him? He's in the principal's office right now. And he's like, sure, I'll go talk to him. So the kid wouldn't talk to anybody. He would not say a word. He was totally silent. So he went in, started talking to the kid, asking him questions, and the kid wouldn't respond. He wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't speak. And so finally, he asked him the question. He said, who are you? And the kid said, invisible. He said, okay. Yeah. So, and this kid, he lived with his grandfather, so the father was missing in the home. So he said, okay, because we're in a school in a public environment, can't say, what does God say? He said, so what does love say that you are? He said, a genius guitar player. And this just came right out of the kid. Bubbled up. He didn't have a guitar, never played a guitar, never seen a guitar practically. And so what this man did, he said, well, okay. So he went and he bought this kid a guitar. And so the grandfather, because the grandfather didn't have a clue what to do with this kid, he said, well, if you will, since you bought him a guitar, I'll get him guitar lessons. So he checked up on the kid. A year later, he'd already won all kinds of awards in regards to, he was one of the top kids in the school system, or in the school. This kid's life was totally turned around. Because, see, this is the problem, and this is what technology and everything else does, is it hides people's identities. It keeps them away. It says that you are invisible and that you don't have a voice, even though we think that because of technology we have a voice. The opposite is more true. And so that kid found his voice, and we have to learn more. So it's in my heart to help people, as many people as possible, find out who they are. If you learn who you are and who your identity is, and only Jesus can tell you who you are, once you know your identity, you can learn your purpose. But you can't find it. It doesn't work the other way. Your purpose without your identity will always be misdirected. And I think that's one of the things, as far as all the sex trafficking and all this kind of stuff, you talk about, yes, use your voice. But I think a lot of these kids feel invisible, like that one little boy did. And you have one person give you some attention, inappropriate though it may be, and then they latch onto it. So I would ask you ladies this. Okay, let's just first speak to the environments where you have both parents. I know that there's other environments, but let's speak to the father and the mother, and and let's talk to that family and say, okay, how do you keep your kid, how do you give them a voice? How do you keep them out of, the situations of falling into being prey for a predator? So I think I'll throw that question out there and start with whoever wants to start.
Go ahead, Reba.
You go ahead, Toya.
Well, that's what we do.
I was going to say,
vulnerable no more
the expert.
You've talked to so many people, and I know you're, having done that, you have a real perspective I don't have. But I would say that is why we have created all of this information for parents and for kids to go and actually, you can watch different segments and see specific topics that can be watched if you want to watch it first without your kids and filter through the conversation you want to have with your children and then watch it together. Please feel free to do that. We have recorded 3 live events. One is co-ed, and the first 2 were for parents, or because the first 2 were female only, and the third one was a co-ed group. We have a mix of things for people to watch and listen to that you can pick pieces from as a mother, father, child, family, a more traditional, I guess, in old times would have been family center. Then y'all can do that together. But like a single dad, a single mom can go into our For the One.1 is okay. I'm going to throw that out there so anybody would know.
I'll get it on the screen. I want as much information out there as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So if you went into For the One.1, you could peruse that thing for months and find different pieces you want to watch personally. Then there'll be some you want to watch with your children. Then there'll be some that you can do with community groups, church groups. And we will eventually, and by January 1st, I intend to have a giftable giveaway curriculum content for families and churches to use.
Awesome.
I wanted to go to children, youth, and family in our public school. We're getting it everywhere we can because the parents need to know why their children are vulnerable. They need to know why they're vulnerable by not being aware of some of these very things that Trent and Reba and I have been talking about. But it would put it all in a conversational nutshell. This is such a big conversation. You can pick and choose what you want to watch at your own pace. We have 10 videos that we recorded during COVID, during the lockdown. And each one of those are done by different specialists that talk about all these segments.
I saw some of those. They were actually
on YouTube
on
and see them.
Page. Yeah, I remember seeing. In fact, one of
They're
them.
really good.
They were really good. I highly recommend it. And those that she's speaking to right now are on For the One.1. And that's where I found it. And he was I don't know if he was, I don't think he was FBI. I can't remember exactly what his position was, but he was in law enforcement, and he had some really good things to say as well. I mean,
Anthony Mays.
Go ahead.
So he was the commander at our Attorney General's office. He's the commander over child sexual exploitation. My lips wouldn't. Yes, his commanding position was over that. So he is so wise and brought so many great things that parents could do, and actually the red flags that would show parents and families that their kids have an issue. So he things you could watch out for. And then what do you do with that information to protect your children?
Well, that's really good. Now, there's also another website, if I'm not mistaken, and that's Vulnerable No More. I know that's kind of your catchphrase, but is this that Vulnerable No More I know is out on For the One.1, but y'all were recently filming some stuff that was amazing, by the way, that you'd sent the other day, and I'll put those links here as well. But is there another website as well, or is it just For the One.1?
You can get to everything through For the 1.1. So For the 1.1 is the very top tier of our ministry.
Okay.
And we broke it into two separate things. One is we support phase 3 survivors of
Okay,
sex
yeah.
trafficking. And then the second thing that we are focused on with every breath in our bodies is to getting this vulnerable no more content out into the community. Because if you all know what it looks like and sounds like, you adults know, then that's awesome. If your kids find out, we can win this war. We can win it.
Oh,
If
especially,
everybody finds out, we can win it.
no question. And here's the thing too, is that we don't have to eat the whole elephant, so to speak, all at once. It begins in our community, and we each have a circle of influence. And I think it's really important that we realize that this is a concerted effort. You're in Albuquerque. We're here in Amarillo and Bushland and in the Panhandle of Texas. And so here's the thing: is that God, we know people know people that we don't know. I mean, and so He connects us. And I think that if we can begin to make our communities aware, I think that we really can. I mean, we can make sure that they don't come into our communities. Let them know there's going to be a lot of pain if they do. Yeah. So,
and that's the good part of social media. We were asking people for 2 years during COVID. We're like, you can be somebody not in this state or even in this country, and you could help join alongside with us and actually become remote volunteer by sharing, following us, sharing it to your own circle group, to your sphere of influence. And you can't believe the phone calls I've navigated and the emails I've gotten because somebody shared it on their social media. This is how we win with social media.
Yes.
It's so good.
That is good.
Well, so I'm gonna direct something kind of your way, Reba, and that is, so in the area of technology, so I have other ministry. I think that, I know we've done some things in the church, but it's called Kids, Parents, and Tech. And one of the things I came up with, or I dubbed the spill effect, and it's social media pornography, immoral concepts, loss of innocence, and loss of ambition. And you kind of go in that order. Social media, in my opinion, is it's the devil's workshop. It really is. I know there's, just like you mentioned, there are some good things, but there's so much bad stuff, especially for young people, and whatnot. But pornography. And I want to kind of touch on that a little bit. So you've done a lot of research in the area of human trafficking, and you had touched on and mentioned, or I believe it was you, you made a statement the other day that I thought was kind of powerful, and I'd like you to touch on this. And it has to do with the seductress in Proverbs, I believe, and in pornography. And from a woman's perspective, as we talked a minute ago, there's both men and women that are drawn into this now. I don't know if you speak to one differently than the other. I know exactly how to speak to the men, but what are your thoughts in regards to pornography, what it does to the spirit, and what we need to do for pulling some of them out?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got to know that we aren't battling flesh and blood.
That's right.
And throughout Proverbs, there's I don't have the chapters here, but there's like 4 chapters. I think it starts in chapter 5 through 8 or 9, I can't remember. But throughout that, it talks about the seductress. And as I was reading it, the end game is utter destruction. And it's talking about the man particularly, about the seductress and how she lures him in, and then it's just, the end game is just utter destruction. But as I was reading it, I felt like God was showing me this is a seductive spirit.
Yeah.
Because we are not battling flesh and blood. The women need to know they're battling it as much as a man is.
Yeah.
Because a woman is trying to compete with another woman. And what I tell young women and girls and women even my age, you're not to battle that, you're to destroy that.
Absolutely.
That is not something you compete with. That is not, you destroy it.
Well, that's a spirit of comparison.
Yeah.
Right?
It is a spirit of comparison.
Yeah.
And for the men, it's just, okay, do you want to be strong? If you want to be strong, like God has called you to be strong, and women are called to be strong, they're called to be empowered. But in order to do that, we've got to overcome this seductive spirit that's coming out and against us. And it's ultimately a Jezebel spirit.
Yes, it
really
absolutely
is what it is. And but as I have just taught different groups and individuals in this area, it's about knowing what you're fighting sometimes is key. I know even when my husband and I were talking about it a while back, when I started telling him, what we're battling is a seductive spirit. And he said, now that I have a name to it, it helps.
That's a good, I love Ernie. We need to get him on here at some point. But no, that's exactly right. It is.
Yeah. And so I think that's just vital that we know what we're fighting. That in itself will begin to equip us. And So.
I think that's good. So let's talk about, pornography. It is absolutely prolific. We gave some statistics about how much it's being viewed. Some people, they wake up and they're watching it with eating their cereal. It's truly an addiction. There's all the studies about what it does in regards to the dopamine in the brain. And there is literally a chemical and physiological response to the pornography. But more importantly, there is a spiritual response, because what happens is you're getting all the gain without any of the effort and work. And so and then enough is never enough. So in the area of pornography, obviously as a man, I've counseled and I've just seen so much. I don't remember who said it, but y'all talked about just it being women being as addicted. It's not just women; it's little kids. At a Hope Choice, a ministry here in Amarillo, there was a little girl that came in. She was 8 years old and she was addicted to pornography. So this is the first thing I'm going to tell parents, what not to do. And the parents said, well, she got an iPad for Christmas, and it was quote unquote, it's hers. What are we supposed to do? And that's when you take and you smack the parent in the back of the head and you say, you take it away from the kid. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
But it's insane how many parents want to be their kid's friend instead of being their parent. So first and foremost, you are responsible for that child, the devices that you put in their hand. And I'm going to give you some more tools here in a minute, but I'll say this. In Matthew 18:6, Luke 17:2, Mark 9:42, they say the exact same thing. And it says, you're better tie a millstone around your neck and to cast yourself into the sea than to hurt one of these little ones. Okay, so that means these predators and these people that are pursuing your kids or intentionally trying to harm your children, let me tell you, they're heaping coals on their head. They're going to get their justice in the end. But we don't want our kids to fall into that vein. We want to protect them and keep them safe. So here's the thing I'm going to say. I'm going to get y'all's opinion on this. And so I'm always, like, what's the age for a phone and all this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, if you want an age, wait until they can drive. Now, you can get a burner phone or a family phone. And so when the kids go out and they're with friends, then I'll tell you software. You can use Guardian or Custodio or some things like that. So when they're on networks outside of your home, it protects the device and they can't get to things. And you can see every text message. You can see everything that they're viewing and everything. And you can restrict them from getting to certain things. I would tell you, but here's the thing is that there's no need for young kids to have these devices. That's the first thing that is I feel like predators are going to use to exploit them and to pull them into areas of pornography. And I'm going to talk to the parents who are struggling with pornography in a minute, but I think that's my opinion. What are y'all's thoughts in regards to, like, your kids when I don't know how big of a deal it was because there wasn't the phone really.
Right. Yeah, we didn't have the battle that the parents are having right now, but my thing is that the parents need to take their authority back. We've given way too much authority over the internet, over their devices, and allowing them, and no, they should not even, they're talking about they're over-sexualizing our children. No, they should not be teaching our children about sex, period.
Period.
That is the parent's job, and God created it on purpose. It's supposed to be a beautiful thing within covenant between a husband and a wife, but that has been perverted on pornography sites, and these kids that are getting a hold of it at a young age, biologically, they are not capable to handle this. They cannot handle what they're seeing. And just like this little 8-year-old girl, I read about a little 9-year-old girl, a 9-year-old boy, and he was addicted. He can't handle that. Children should not be.
Nobody can handle it.
That should not be
especially kids.
At access in their hands. And I think parents just need to know that I heard once that it's not if your child is exposed to pornography right now, it's when your child is.
No, it absolutely is. And then the age they first see it's scary.
Yeah, and so it's about parents being the guardian of these devices. And I love, Toya, what one of the officers on one of the panels that I watched that you had, that I watched that video. I can't remember the name of the panel. But one of the things he said, parents, take your authority back. No, wait, just a second. He said, make an account, walk into their account. In other words, parents have got to guard what they're watching. Don't let them go into the bedroom, just like that one video that Toya has, that it shows all these men coming into the bedroom with their child. You need to know it's on your doorstep right now. It's not in a foreign country anymore. In the U.S., it's in every single state. And you can pretty much safely say it's within a block or two of victims of children that are being trafficked. But the thing of it is, I was thinking about this today. Would a parent allow their child to open the door to a stranger if he knocked on the door, rang the doorbell? What do you tell your child to do if, say, the parent is gone? You tell them, do not open that door.
That's exactly right.
Well, I'm telling you, parents, there are people, there are predators, there are evil predators that are knocking on your door right now. Some may have already entered in, but there are things and ways that you can stop it. There's resources that you can get a hold of to talk and carry on the right age-appropriate conversations with your children.
And that's important.
Yeah.
It's the principle. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But I want you to touch on this, both of you. The principle I first mentioned, it says the whoever speaks to you about a certain topic first becomes the expert in that area. Yeah. So when I was in second grade, my buddy Matt Adams, I mean, he's the same age as me. He was the expert in sex. I mean, you know, and so it took a while to overcome that. So we have had to have conversations with our kids about homosexuality and all this trans stuff and drag. I mean, whoever thought you'd have to talk about a bunch of dudes dressing up in clothes, putting clown makeup on, you know, would be a thing. I mean, and am I disrespecting them? Well, I'm disrespecting the sin, not the person. It's absolutely demonic. And so on that point, I think it's really important. Yes, talk to your kids. Be the first one that they hear from on these topics. And so I think one of the hardest ones to talk about with especially, you know, young, well, but especially young girls. I feel like young girls are attacking the area of their body. And not only just their body, but their image and the sin of comparison. And then you throw all this stuff online. So what would you ladies say? Toya, I'm gonna actually ask you there first. I mean, what are your thoughts in that area in regards to helping equip them and building up confidence in them?
Well, and we talked about this just a little bit. So I see everything through this Vulnerable No More filter. I can't help it. Sure. And I mentioned that I have 3 daughters. So we've certainly navigated this, you know, back when I'm like, you're not getting anything written on the back of your shorts. I don't care who's wearing it, you know, so we did a lot of that too. And it's been ongoing. Even we've got grandkids now, you know, so I've seen it exponentially worse as time has gone on. But even, and I'm 62, but even back when my kids were the age group that yours are now, Trent, you know, we had those conversations. And we talked the other day, Reba, you and I, where I just said, the sooner we get more comfortable talking to our kids about this, and that they see that our heart is not to control, but to love and to protect in a healthy way, that we're not the fun police, you know, or whatever. And we begin to just open up moments of conversation. We need to overcome being uncomfortable about having conversations so that they will come to us and say to us, you know, hey, somebody said to me, or somebody asked me this, or especially online, somebody asked me to send a picture or whatever, which then becomes what we call sextortion, where they use it against them to get them to do more things. But anyway, again, it's the filter with Vulnerable No More. At home, It is critical that we work as a team. And so the sooner you can start talking to your kids about how you're a team, our family is a team. We work together with social media. We talk about everything. There's not one thing you can't come to me and talk to me about.
Yeah.
You need to know that. Not so you'll
Yeah.
get in trouble or I can throw punishments around, but so you can ask me questions. And I promise you, I'm not going to hold secret things away from you. I'm going to tell you, but through a filter of God's love and what his priorities are and the things he's put in place to protect us, to keep us safe. I want to do
Absolutely.
that in a family environment. And I think the younger you can create that with both your kids, I'm doing it with my grandkids right now. We'll be driving along organically. You know, you can talk to us about anything, right? You could talk to your pop-up and tutu about anything. And that's when I throw out those conversations. I don't sit them on the chair across from me and go, look into my eyes. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about sex.
They all
You
lock
know, I
up
mean,
then.
they'll
Yeah.
shut down in a second. But that's when you say that really what you're wearing sets you up to really, and yes, you can, as Christian families, you can go into, that is not who God says you are. It's not. It's cheapening the version of who God created you to be. That is not who you are. You don't, the world wants you to be a seductress. They're saying that's empowering and powerful. Well, why? Of course the enemy's going to try to convince them that way. So they will put down their barriers and boundaries, and they will put that all out on social media and when they get dressed to go out. So I think the sooner, and we pray over their hearts. Father, I thank you that you created my child and you know her or he better than anyone. Help me to have the words to speak to my children. Help me to see the way you want me to deal with their hearts and these issues. Even help me when a discipline is necessary. Help me to create what that discipline is that would be most effective to capture their hearts. That's what we need. And frankly, that's what our love for Jesus has done with us as adults. We're not following these don't do this rules. It's because we're so smitten by a loving Father that we don't want to do anything that compromises that. And so I'm just saying that's what we tried to create in our home, and I felt miserably some days. But we want them, your kids, your grandkids, to have a heart so soft and so loving towards God, and that they're so sure that you love them enough to step into their life and to do social media with them. That means that we're not going to let them go in their bedroom with their laptop or their
That's right.
phones or their iPad. We're not. Whether you get one for them is up to you. That becomes your job then, because it's not their fault if a predator gets to them on there. It's
No,
not their
and actually,
fault.
there's responsibility in that area. Now, I'll tell you this: kids are going to try to they're going to be exposed if it's not through this. There's always going to be things, and we have to prepare them, set them up. But listen, we can make it. It's not about, like you said, being the fun police. So we talked about this. So we have 5 kids, 4 girls, 1 boy. God has a sense of humor. Oh my gosh, I have all brothers. Okay, I have 1 sister, and my sister's 6 years older than me. And so being that far behind her, I didn't really know. I saw girl stuff or whatever else, but I didn't get what girls were going through. So I didn't really get the girl stuff at that point. I didn't care. I was too little. But then, so I knew what to do with boys. And then God gave us all these girls. And I'm glad he did, because that means when I get old, I'll have someplace that somebody will take care of me. If you have all these sons, they may not be as willing. But I will say that there's struggles that I did not expect. And but there's 2 things. A little boy, they need to know that they're powerful, they're strong, and that they have what it takes. A little girl needs to know that they are beautiful and they are worth fighting for. So I want to tell the parents that right now, that you have to answer those questions for your kids, because if you don't, I promise you somebody else will. And I think that kind of leans, into what both of you have said in regards to just, having their heart. That's what we do in our home. We have the heart test, and my wife, Brandy, she's amazing. She's way better than I ever deserved. And she and I, so if we're struggling, in a home, that's the beauty of marriage. So there's some children that Brandy can speak to better than me. They just relate better, and vice versa. And so that what's really good in that regard is that whenever, there's maybe we're dealing with something, we call it the heart test. And do I have their heart? Because if I have their heart, I have their ear. And so I think we need to talk about, what does that mean? How do we have their heart? And how do we know we have their heart? And I think that that's a practical thing that would be helpful to parents. I'll start with you, Reba. What do you think?
Well, I just want to kind of back up about what Toya said about where we need to approach this without it being like we're some sort of police over our kids.
Yeah, I totally agree.
They've got to know that we love them. This is not because we don't trust them. It's because we don't trust what's out there right now.
That's right.
I mean, we fought and battled it when the girls were younger, but nothing to the massive scope that it is now.
Oh, it's off the scales now, yeah.
But what we did with our girls is, in one of our daughters, I just share an example of one of them. I told her, I said, listen, I said, if you're ever anywhere that you don't feel comfortable, you're with your friends, you just call me. We have a code, and that code was, Mom, really, do I have to come home? That's all she had to say.
That's good.
And so I got that phone call, and I told her, I said, you will not be in trouble. And so, I mean, those things are vital to build. Maybe get a code word with your child, whether it's, and what I'm talking about, whether they're out with their friends or something like that. But within the realm that we're battling now, because it's right in our own home, it's under our roof, I love what Toya said, don't let them take their devices into their rooms. And one thing is to build that trust with your child. Ernie and I were talking about this morning on the patio when we were praying about this podcast. And I asked him, I said, what would you want to tell our daughters right now, or any other little girls or young girls and boys? Because he said, and the boys. And I said, yes. And he said, tell them you love them, but don't just tell them. Show them that you love them. Yeah. This is vital. Show them that you approve, like you were saying about your son. One thing that he mentioned that I want to just add in here, which I think is amazing, teach them self-defense.
Absolutely.
They need to take some self-defense classes. Because I think so many, I want to take them. I haven't done it yet, but I want to take some self-defense classes because I think young girls, they go into this and start them young. Start them at 13, 12 years old.
No, even younger.
Okay.
Even
10.
But they'll have a fighting chance. They'll have a fighting chance.
Well,
and if nothing else, it empowers them. And in these self-defense classes, they're going to have a confidence, and they're going to go, oh, wait, what that boy is doing to me is wrong. I learned this in self-defense, you know? So
you know what number one thing in self-defense is?
What?
Your voice.
Okay.
Yes.
Especially, period, no matter who it is. I mean, you may not know my past, but I have thousands of wrestling matches under my belt, several national titles. I mean, so I'm a fighter and a musician. I mean, who knew? My mom put me in piano lessons when I was 6. My dad put me in wrestling lessons. Neither one would let me quit, so this is what you get. But, actually, so I don't know if you talked with Jake. So I've had a number of men approached me recently just saying, listen, I just want to know more about self-defense, how to fight. And so my sweet wife, and Toya, you haven't met my wife yet, but she really is like just the sweetest thing in the world. In fact, even Pastor Jeff from the pulpit is always talking about how sweet my wife is. And so Jake was over. So Jake and Jen, they just got some chickens and stuff. And we have a lot of chickens. They're going around. My wife's carrying a dead chicken while they're having a conversation. It was really funny. Anyway, then so my wife's real sweet. And so Jake was going to come. He's like, okay. She's like, well, have fun fighting. But it's one of those things where you really can. And there's not a whole lot to self-defense. Think of this. Have you ever been holding, a small child? Okay, and that small child hurt you in one way. I mean, I've had toddlers, take me to my knees. And so you don't realize how powerful you are. But I'll go and give you your first self-defense lesson. It is your voice. You be loud. You tell them you see them, and you will not be taken advantage of. You get away from me. I know I'm yelling into the mic, and I'm redlining on everything, but that's what you do. Yeah. Use your voice. So lesson number 1, you've just had your first lesson. And you already have naturally that voice. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Toya.
I'm so sorry. I just was on that note. We actually, after our second event, we paid for a group of 25 young girls 12 and up to go to a smart girl self-defense class here in Albuquerque. And she does this great mix of exactly what you're talking about, you know, using your voice. And then one of our speakers from Global One here in Albuquerque, that's what she layers into our events. She actually, her segment is all about that. So even if you went into our stuff and you access Rachel Chance's Global One portion, it's called Proceed with Caution. And she actually speaks into these young people. Here's what you say, here's what you do, here's how you put distance between them while you're looking for one to attend in person. Because I'm telling you, all three of my girls have gone through it. I've done self-defense. We've all done concealed carry. I mean, we're crazy over here.
I like you. No, you're not crazy. You're my kind of people.
No, that's the other thing.
No, we're
Teach them how to
just- no.
shoot.
Teach them how to shoot. Well,
I'm just saying, and even if you're not comfortable with that, once they get that, there is self-esteem that comes along with self-defense training. There's like, you know what? I can sew. I can sew. And I had one of my biggest breakthroughs spiritually was when I figured out I can sew. I can be feminine or I can tear you to pieces in the parking lot.
I love it.
It's up to you, you know? So let's,
That's
yes,
right.
thank
I
you for
believe you too.
mentioning that.
Well,
It's
Yeah.
critical.
I'll tell you the second part. So the other thing is look them in the eye. You know, you can. It's amazing the power that you have. So even if you're scared to death, which you will be, okay, it's okay to be scared. That's what courage is, you know. But you look them in the eye, and you be loud, and you let that voice. So anyway, that's one practical thing, and y'all are both right. Get in a self-defense class.
We need to do one. So
Well, maybe I do. I need my little girls. They're all ready. They asked me. So anyway, I think this is really good. I don't want to. We're running up against the clock a little bit. I want to talk about pornography and some things that we can do in regards to helping people come out of that addiction. So let me go ahead and say this. Yeah, pornography. There's nothing good about it. And you can say, well, my wife and I, or this, and that. It's just it's to spice things up. No, it's not. Actually, let me tell you what the marriage bed is. And that's one man, one woman, nobody else watching, and it's a covenant between husband, wife, and God. That's it. And there's nothing else. You can say, well, I'm trying to get ideas. No, you're not. I'm telling you what, God will give you all the ideas you need. You don't have to. This is something that comes, naturally. You don't have to go. And I'll tell you what, I'll say this before I give you some solutions and things that you need to overcome. But my wife and I, have a beautiful marriage. And I did not think, when we first got married, I was like, how do you become more attracted to your wife over years? And we're on our 20th year now. And I'll tell you this, my wife is more beautiful to me than she has ever been, ever. And I'll tell you what, the more I pursue God, and the more I pursue my bride, the more beautiful she is to me. And so I'll tell you this, if you really want things to get, I didn't think things could get better, but they do. And I know this is a topic nobody wants to talk about, but we're going to talk about it. It's my show. We're going to do it anyway. Okay. And so the thing is that if you're looking at pornography, it says, I think it's in Matthew 5:28, it says, if you even look on another woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. Okay. And if I got the chapter and verse wrong, go look it up. It's in Matthew. But just know that you have to, and on that particular point is that, yes, you're going to see women that you may be attracted to, but it's what you do with that thought. You hold it captive. Okay. So let's talk about some practical things. First of all, if you have an issue with pornography, you need to make sure that you're not sitting in front of a computer when other people are not around. I would even go, you're going to say, well, what do you do with, your phone? Okay, well, what I would do, and here's what I highly recommend, is that you need to actually have your wife or somebody you trust that's going to hold you accountable, another man that's going to speak truth and life into you, hold the passwords, and then you load child protection software on here. Basically, you can use, I've mentioned them in previous episode, but Guardian is one, Custodio is another. And in fact, I know people who have done this even because they're addicted to social media, not just pornography. They've actually had people put locks on their phone because they could not quit looking at social media, which was, again, an addiction. And so you're making sure that you're being held accountable. You're bringing it all into the light. So there are a lot of practical resources and people that I trust online. One of them that you can look at is actually XXX Church. I know those are not usually letters that you put together, but it was actually founded helping pull people out of the areas of pornography. And it's evolved and grown. Of course, they've been attacked. There's my first recommendation in anybody struggling in the area of pornography is to make sure that you bring it into the light. And that's going to be the hardest thing that you do, because you're, one, embarrassed, you're shamed, you're afraid that your life is going to be destroyed. Well, let me go ahead and tell you, your life, God, he'll take, when you bring things into light, you'll be amazed at how many people will lock arms with you, but especially the Father. But the enemy is the one that works in the darkness. And your issue is never going to get better until it is brought into the light. And so if you're married, if you're, I've heard it both ways. I've heard women having to go, and not just the man being addicted to pornography, but the wife or the, you know. So sit down and the conversation goes like this. I have something I need to tell you, and I have an addiction, and I'm addicted to, I've been looking at this, you know, and I'm ashamed. And let them say whatever they need to say. If they cuss at you, if they're mad at you, just let them say whatever they need to say. Get it out. That's the worst point right there. And then you can start working. It's at least in the light. And then you bring a pastor into it. You bring other men, an elder in the church, people that you know that you can help walk this through this process. And I'll tell you this, 9 times out of 10, the spouse always sticks. I think it's even higher than that, if you know the truth. I think it's like 95+% unless, except in extreme cases, the wife ends up supporting, the husband, or the husband supporting the wife, and it becomes part of their testimony and grows them close together. For that which the enemy meant for evil, God turns to good. And I'll say this too, and I'm going to let y'all both speak to this point, and that is generational curses. Let me tell you something. When you open a door, you say, okay, well, this is your struggle. As soon as you open that door, there's a spirit attached to pornography. I mean, a lot of spirits. There's a lot of spirits in a lot of different areas, okay, from lust to, from deceit, you name it. You're opening that up, and when you open up that spirit, you're also exposing your family to it, your children. And it's just like alcoholism and everything else. You are creating a generational curse. You're cursing not only yourself, cursing your marriage, but you're also putting a curse over your children. And I just thought I would get y'all's thoughts as to that particular point as well, because I would imagine, Toya, in the environment that you see, you can probably see generational things, connected to the trafficking.
We do. We see like a grandmother that was either had sold herself, or people would say, that was just prostitution. I'm saying if you really got the stories on it, you would know that it was trafficking even back in the day. And then on to that person had a child, and so the mom ends up also being a prostitute. And then this next child, the next generation, having it in the same way we see unwed, marriage or pregnancies, etc. So to your point, absolutely. And also, Reba and I had this conversation, because even through sexual abuse, one thing that I say, it's almost like getting giardia or being infested with a parasite. When something like that is particularly sexual for some reason comes at a child, it just feels like that is transmitted in that way. And I know it's a spiritual thing that does occur when somebody who has that issue. So the next door neighbor, when I was 4 years old, whatever, and certainly he dealt with whatever level of pornography at the time, but also he was such a deep, deep pedophile, because he also got my older sister, but that transmitted. And so I had issues I couldn't even put my finger on growing up all my life. And so this is similar in that way. I'm saying you're right, that once it goes from one person and it doesn't leave them, it just spreads. Like if you drop blue food coloring in water, it is absolutely going to go in, and eventually that water will be blue. It does that thing in a family, and there's no way around it, which is why we have to be the breakers of that. That's why we have to say and to decide no more. And when I got born again in 1980, that's what I did. I'm like, not one more generation will be affected this way. Not one. Not on my watch. And that's what men and women who are addicted to pornography can say and do. Not one more. God will break this over my family, and I will not have it one more second in this family. And even there may be some people that'll end up having to go before their family and pray together. God, we thank you that this family honors you with all our lives, all our hearts. We'll not be controlled by one thing, not by pornography, not by money, not by anything that is other than godly. So I'm just agreeing with you. Reba, what would you say about this?
Yeah, most definitely. I've seen it over the years as I've counseled and ministered to people that there seems to always be a generational curse that needs to be broken off. It usually doesn't just start with you. It's somewhere in the past. It could be a generational curse of sexual abuse, whatever it might be, but it's what I have seen is that people that have struggled in these areas, it's like they have a neon sign over their head and they're wondering, why do I feel like a magnet to this kind of thing? Well,
Yes.
because there's things in the spirit realm as well in the darkness that recognize this. And so it does need to be broken off. For instance, let's say the dad's struggling with pornography. Well, he's very likely looking at it within his own home,
Yeah.
you know, somewhere in his office or whatever. And I'm not just picking on the men because it's very prevalent with the women as well. But what happens is I read this story by this pastor's wife once, and she said that it's like there's holes in the ceiling above our roof because our home is supposed to be the place that protects our children. When we open those doors, it's like a leaky ceiling, and it is going to get on our children.
That's
it
good.
will get on our kids. And I don't know how many people I've prayed with over the years of breaking off different generational curses, but you can just simply say, it stops here. No more.
Amen.
It's not on my watch anymore, and it will not fall into my children. And then begin to walk it out like Trent talked about, you know, of where, you know, you get that accountability. You begin to, one thing you mentioned earlier was about getting to the root of things. Ask God to show you where the root of that addiction is, because it's very likely it was sometime in your past where you were exposed or you were sexually abused, or maybe you got something online, which is very common now. Over and over I hear that when I minister to men, which I always have another man with me when I do that. But there's always some sort of exposure of that. So it's asking God, show me where the root is of it. Let's take it to the very root and cut this thing off, you know.
You know, and I want to say something. You said something that I think is important, okay? There's a big difference between temptation and addiction. Because here's the thing, you're like, well, the root is I think women are pretty. Okay, that's not the same thing. It could be if it's perverted and you're looking at women the wrong way. But that's the thing about men that I often talk. They feel guilty for just seeing a woman and thinking that she's beautiful. And I want to say again, so it's one thing, if the bird flies through the barn, it's a whole other thing to build a nest. So just, you know, I think, but I believe when she's talking about the root, just if you say, okay, well, I think, you know, I've noticed this woman, I think she's attractive. That's probably not a root. We're talking about something much deeper that makes you feel like you get validation by looking or pursuing the pornography. I have two things I'd like to do real quick. First of all, we're going to do a wild card round here in a minute, where you just anything that's on your heart, anything that comes to mind, anything that you want to share. Both of you, I want to give you as much opportunity to do that as possible. This whole, you know, couple of episodes, which first of all, thank you ladies for just agreeing to come on. Y'all are incredible. Y'all are truly amazing. And I hope that, you know, just y'all can influence others in this area. And I think that's it. So like we talked about sex trafficking, if somebody is watching this or listening to this online and wants to say that they want to figure out how to help in that area, I don't think we've talked about that. How would somebody get involved with helping in the human trafficking segment?
Reba, do you
Toya,
want
let's
to
start with
take
you.
that,
Go
or
ahead.
do you
Yeah,
want
go
me
ahead, Toya.
to?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Toya.
I wasn't sure. I always tell people, if you can find a local organization, because in almost every larger city, there's an organization already. So they are looking for volunteer. I'm sure of it. People will have different jobs they'll be able to do. It may be that you're uncomfortable working right with survivors or whatever, but there's going to be a list of things that don't include that. If it's going to be working with the survivors themselves, then it could just be that they have certain levels of education. Our home did. You had to have accomplished certain training levels to work with these actual women, and we just had women. We didn't have the boys. So anyway, I would encourage you to please research online what is available in your community and get plugged in on whatever level you're comfortable. if you catch wind of or hear of and if you follow us on Instagram, or you can do all that through our For the 1.1, you can find out if there's if we're doing an event, which will always be live streamed, and you want to watch that to educate yourself more. You could also find out through watching our social media if somebody maybe near you is having something and you feel passionate enough about getting connected to that, then I recommend you do that. But I would absolutely check out first and see who in your backyard might need your help right now. You know,
Yeah,
and the more
absolutely.
you're going to get involved in that and start talking about it, your kids and your community are watching you. They need to know this information. So start talking it up. Talk about what you learned today. You'll be in the line one day and you're going to hear somebody go, "Oh, those girls are doing that because they like it. It's just their income and they enjoy it." And you can say, "Absolutely, no, that's not right." So just educate yourself. That
That's
too.
that's great advice. Reba, same question.
Well, I really encourage you to go follow For the One with Toya because they have just a wealth of information out there, and
And
I
we
think
trust
that's
and we trust her.
and we trust Toya.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
I'm not real familiar with our community and how active they are in it. I think there's a couple of organizations I'm not real familiar with, so
If
I
we learn more also about our
we
community,
can
yeah, we'll publish it.
yeah, for sure. We can be looking in that arena. If you want to look more globally or just spread out a little bit further, those that are actually in all the states that are. One thing I would recommend is also go follow. We're hearing Toya talk about just her. She's on the front lines of bringing awareness, vulnerable no more. Of course, they've got the third phrase of helping women that have come out of sex trafficking. There's other men and women that are out there on the front line actually rescuing children that are coming out of human trafficking, and they're partnering with law enforcement, and so those might be another one of the other NGOs,
Yeah.
so there's some that I follow and I have supported, and that's Operation Underground Railroad. Another one is Veterans for Child Rescue, which I mentioned a while ago. Of course, there's A21, there's Exodus Cry. All of those
Yes.
are just,
Yes.
Parents, if you want to know more about online predators, some of these, like, especially Exodus Cry, you're gonna get the information
Yeah.
and the resources. Another one more thing I want to recommend that the parents get, because we were talking about share some resources with them. A121 has made a video called Secrets, and it's a very short video. It would be ideal for girls and boys, moms and dads, to sit down and say, or moms or whoever with your daughter, "I want you to watch this," because it literally shows how from the point of a predator messaging a girl online to the point where they're promising her that she could get some sort of dance talent agency that's going to recruit her, to the point that she walks out her front door and gets in the car and disappears. So those are things and it's a short video, and sometimes when your kids, especially teenagers, watch something that is about another teenager, I feel like they're going to be more attentive in watching that. And I guarantee you, if they watch it, they will never forget it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Toya, I'm going to start with you. Wild card round here. Anything that we haven't covered or it's on your heart or that you would like to reiterate, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
I just would say again, it's the biggest conversation. People think it's simple, it's not. So I just will encourage one more time, please go to our website and begin to navigate around in there to get educated. There's not one thing on there that we haven't vetted, that we don't believe is to be true, and certainly through our own experience and our own research. I would also say, please, if you want to know, with our National Human Trafficking Hotline, how they break down the calls that are currently coming in. They finally updated their website. It's National Human Trafficking Hotline, And so Polaris is the group that they take all of those calls and they break it up into all these different segments of how many kids broken into how many ages, how young adults, nationality, how they were trafficked, where they were trafficked. I recommend you go in there and kind of navigate around in the National Human Trafficking Hotline website as well. I think you'll get a lot of good information there. But always remember, it is so underreported. People don't know what they're looking at most of the time, and they're not going
Statistics
to
on this,
self-identify.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. And they won't self-identify because we talked a lot about how we need to get our children's hearts. And the reason why is because if we don't, they will.
That's right.
And if they get their hearts, then it's over because it's a lot harder to talk. So the kidnapped ones, they know they're kidnapped. They know they've been stolen and they're being sold and it's horrible. The ones who have been won over and they think these people love them, those are the ones that I'm most terrified for. So let's get ahead of it.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. All right. Well, Reba, I'm going to throw the same thing out there. Is there anything that you want to mention here?
Yeah. For years, I've been on the redemptive end of this, and I've always wanted to be more on the preventive, of seeing it stop, where and yes, we need both.
Yeah.
Both are necessary. Yes. But what if we reduce that amount on the redemptive end by preventive, which would be a sucker punch in the enemy's gut? That
Amen.
would be what we want to do as parents. I would just encourage you. So many times, I don't know how many mothers have said, well, I don't want to, overstep their privacy and, or I don't want to come across as being paranoid. This is not being paranoid. We are in a war.
That's right.
And there are
That's right.
predators out there coming into our own homes online now. And you need more of parents need to be more militant, not in a aggressive way with their children. We've got to approach it in a way where they're going to listen and walk them through it. But you've got to have a militant mindset because we're in a war. This isn't paranoia. This is the truth. And the truth will set you and your children free. This is preventing something from happening like happened at the Mavericks game in Dallas. This is on our own turf now. This could be our own children, but it could also stop. That's the good news. That's what we want to bring here is the good news. If you get proactive, and even if your kids think you're being paranoid, no, this is the truth. This is what's happening. These are the facts, and we're going to be more careful. We're going to be more watchful. And we're going to teach you how to walk in the empowerment and the identity that God has created you to, who He's called you to be and to do.
Well, I think that's really good. And I think I'd like to add this because it comes down to listen to the Holy Spirit. If you have a check in your spirit about something, pursue it. I can't tell you how many times, like I can think of one story in particular of somebody that we counseled. They went to a family, the kid was kind of, usually not well received, but a family member wanted to stay up, watch a movie with them, and the mom had a check. Oh, no, at least he's giving us attention, and you know what happened. So listen to Holy Spirit. Listen to those checks. That check you filled the other day. I had a check. My oldest daughter was going someplace, and I mean, he gave me a check, and I was like, Abba, Father, if it's me, that's one thing, but if it's you, also give her the same check. And he did. Absolutely did. And what that did is it showed her that she can listen. And so we sat down and I just said, hey, I have a check about this. All I said, we were having a meal. I said, I had a check about this. What do you think? She goes, oh my gosh. And then, yeah. And so have that dialogue and that conversation with your kids, listen to Holy Spirit. He knows everything going on. And I would, and Toya, you may tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like the majority of these situations that arise, if you listen to the Father, you listen to the Holy Spirit, they can be avoided. I mean, totally be avoided, never even get in that situation because you're listening to God and getting ahead of it to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stop doubting it. Stop doubting it. I've got a girlfriend here that's in ministry, and that's why I was clapping. Stop doubting yourself. Stop second guessing yourself. I would rather be wrong. I'd rather be wrong and speak up and
Yeah,
say something.
absolutely.
If you
Hey.
had just said, oh, she'll be mad at me, she just got in trouble the other day, so I should let her do this. No, sir. You know, you draw a line in the sand. Like Reba said, this is war. This is absolute war for our families and our kids. And it's hopeful because we can make a decision that might save their lives. And you imparting that into your daughter to say, and you hurting too. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. Good stuff.
This, I think we could keep going. There's so many things that we touch on. And when you get excited about the things of the Spirit and what we can do to really make an impact in the kingdom and to really take back that ground that the enemy has tried to take from us, I want to say before we get out of here, first of all, ladies, y'all are incredible. Thank you both. Reba's books, children's books are amazing, and you can get them out at RebaRussellAuthor.com. And I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it now, but she's in the midst of writing another book, and I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but I'm excited about it. It's not a children's book, but it's a novel, correct?
Yes, it is. And the novel, all I'm going to tell you is a love story with suspense. And it is going to be on this very subject that we're talking about. But we're going to see what can happen, I want to be real careful.
Yeah, I know. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I got to be very careful of what I say right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on this subject, but it's also the beauty of redemption of our sexuality and how God intended for love, true love, to be. And so, yeah, and I want to just add one thing to the parents. Is that okay, Trent?
Absolutely.
All I want to just say is this can be overwhelming because you're like, how do I do all this? Well, I can tell you, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. Let His Spirit lead you. This is good news today. You can get on top of this. You can be the one that prevents something of happening for another child or your own child. So this is all, this is what the enemy does not want to happen.
That's right.
And so this is good news because we're ahead of the game right now just by telling some of the parents right here in this audience.
Well, this has been great. I want to just recap, for the 1.1, vulnerable no more. We have RebaRussellAuthor.com. And I tell you what, both these ladies, anything they're putting out, you can trust. Anyway, again, thank you both for taking your time and being part of this, series of episodes. Toya, has been such a joy getting to meet you. I look forward to staying connected and being a part of your ministry in some capacity. And anyway, in Reba, obviously we're kind of in it together, in ministry and church together. But this is exciting times. Listen, if you are just now listening to Digging for the Truth for the first time, or even heard about the Church at Bushland for the first time, we are a growing, just a spirit-filled church, and we would love to connect with you. You can comment in the comments out here section of the if you're on YouTube. But you can email us. You can call in. We would love to know what you think, and if we can pray for you, if there's anything we can do for you guys. Listen, we love you. We're so thankful that you have taken the time to learn about this important topic and subject, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.